Hello. Good evening. Chapter 4 is pretty small, so I didn't pre-read it. So we're just gonna wing it. I hope you're all doing very well. And let's begin. Chapter 4. Abe Glassman finds a home. Abe Glassman and his peddler's wagon arrived in Aidenville just a few days after the great rain had saved the day. Abe traveled all over southwestern Utah with his peddler's wagon, selling merchandise to ranchers, farmers, and people living in small towns. Everybody, including the children, called him Abe, because he was that type of guy, friendly, kind, and gentle. The wagon was painted white and had signs on both sides of it reading "The Traveling Emporium." It was constructed so that it could be opened to display merchandise on both sides. The tailgate let down, forming steps leading into the wagon, and the aisle down the center of the wagon had shelves on both sides containing merchandise. Everything from hairpins to coyote traps was on display. Tom and I were sitting on our back porch polishing Mama's silverware for Sunday's dinner on the Saturday morning Abe arrived into town. We had a bucket of ashes, and Aunt Bertha had taken them from the kitchen range that morning before building a fire in it, a pan of water, and a pail of clean rags. We dipped the rags into the water and then into the bucket of ashes, and used this to polish all the stains off the silverware. It was a boring job, but one Tom and I had to do every Saturday morning, so the silverware would be all clean and sparkling for our Sunday dinner. Howard K. came running into our backyard and up to our back porch. "Abe and his peddler's wagon are here," he shouted. "He's coming down Main Street right now." Tom got up and ran to the kitchen door. "Mama," he shouted, "can we let the silverware go until after we've seen Abe and his peddler's wagon?" "All right, boys, but don't stay too long," Mama said. We ran around to Main Street with Howard. Abe and his wagon were just passing in front of our house. There were a couple dozen kids following it. We joined them and followed the wagon to a vacant lot owned by Calvin Whitlock, the banker, who always let Abe use it when in town. By the time we had arrived at the vacant lot, there were about 50 kids with us. We waited patiently while Abe unhitched his team and staked them out on the lot. Abe was a small man with a gray beard and mustache. He wore a Jewish skull cap, and his gray hair protruded from beneath it. "I think we're ready now, boys," he said as he let down the tailgate of the wagon. "Get in line and don't push, please." Every year since I could remember, Abe had let us kids see the inside of the wagon first. This was only half of the treat when Abe came into town. He always stationed himself outside the wagon with a glass jar filled with jawbreaker candy, the kind that lasts a long time. As we came out of the wagon, each kid was given a jawbreaker. Tom and I saw inside the wagon and received our jawbreaker, and then returned to our job of polishing silverware on our back porch. Sven was lucky. Mama said he was too old to have to polish silverware anymore. When Papa came home that evening, he told Mama he invited Abe for Sunday dinner. I'm not used to this spelling, and I keep wanting to call him Abel, okay? That's why I keep messing it up. A Sunday dinner in our house without guests was unusual. Mama always prepared for guests because half the time Papa forgot to tell her that he had invited people for Sunday dinner. One Sunday, Papa had forgotten to tell Mama that he had invited Chief Tawat-im and the chief's 2 sons and their squaws for Sunday dinner. The Indian was the chief of the Paruits band of the Parut tribe that lived in the Indian reservation near Aidenville. The chief's name was translated to English, meant Chief Rising Sun, and you would have thought by the way the chief and his sons and their squaws ate that Sunday that none of them had ever expected to see the sun rise again. It was a good thing Mama had prepared for guests that day. Sunday morning, we all went to the community church, where there were only 2 churches in Aidenville, the Mormon Tabernacle and the community church. All the Catholics and Protestants in town went to the community church. Once in a while, a Catholic missionary priest came to Aidenville to baptize Catholic babies and marry Catholics and hold confessions and Mass in the community church. And once a year, the Reverend Engel came to town and held a revival meeting in the big tent on the campground, lasting 1 week. All the Protestants in town went to the revival meeting. When we returned from church, Tom, Swin, and I quickly changed to our old clothes. Then we waited on the back porch until Papa had changed clothes and came out wearing his overalls. This was the day of the week we made ice cream, and everybody helped. We followed Papa down to our ice house, which was located next to our barn. Papa had our ice house filled every winter with big cakes of ice, 2 feet wide and 4 feet long, which were brought from the lake in the mountains. The ice was covered with 2 feet of sawdust so that it wouldn't melt during the summer. Papa took a scoop shovel from a nail on the wall in the ice house and shoveled away the sawdust down to the ice. Then he used a crowbar to pry one of the big cakes of ice loose. Swin was ready with the 2 main. See, this is why we should get a pre-read. Swin was ready with a 2-man ice saw and helped Papa cut off a cake of ice for our ice box and a cake of ice to use to make ice cream. Tom and I used the ice tongs to drag the cake of ice outside, while Papa and Swin covered up the ice in the ice house again with the sawdust. Papa carried 1 cake of ice in the ice tongs, and Tom and Swin the other cake to our backyard. We washed the sawdust off of both cakes of ice with our garden hose. Papa carried 1 cake into the kitchen and put it in the ice box. Tom and Swin put the other cake into the wooden tube and began chopping it up with ice picks. Mama had the ingredients for making chocolate ice cream poured into the freezer bucket by this time. Swin carried the freezer from the kitchen to the back porch. He and Tom packed the freezer with ice and salt. I folded 2 gunny sacks and placed them on top of the freezer. It was my job to sit on the freezer and hold it steady while Tom and Swin took turns turning the handle, which made the freezer bucket go round and round in the ice. When the handle got a little hard to turn, Tom called Mama and told her he thought the ice cream was done. Nobody knew better than Mama that the ice cream wasn't hard enough, but she never let on. Swin uncovered the top of the freezer bucket and wiped the lid off with a towel. Mom dipped a spoon into the ice cream and tasted it. "It isn't done, boys," she said. "Looks done to me," Tom said. There was nothing Mama could do but to let Tom and Swin and me taste a spoonful of the ice cream. "You're right, Mama," Tom said. Isn't done, sorry. Swin put the lid back on the freezer bucket and repacked the top with ice and salt. I took up my position. We all knew Mama wouldn't stand for any more nonsense. My brothers kept turning the handle until they knew the ice cream was frozen just right. "He's ready for sure now, Mama," Tom sang out. Mama came out to the porch carrying a big bread pan and 3 spoons. Swin uncovered the freezer bucket just as Mom started to remove the dasher from the bucket. Tom began to whistle. "What are you whistling about?" Swin asked. "Just thinking about cleaning off the dasher makes me so happy I feel like whistling," Tom answered. But this one time I thought to myself that Seth Smith and Pete Harrison are going to be left out. Every Sunday since school let out, both of them had showed up just as Mama was about to take the dasher out. "Hello, boys," Mama's voice dashed my hopes. "You're just in time." I turned around. Standing on the porch steps were Steph and Pete with their mouths watering. Mama pulled the dasher from the bucket, scraping some of the ice cream off the blades, but still leaving a generous amount. She put the dasher in the bread pan. We had to wait until she went to the kitchen to get spoons for Seth and Pete. "All right, boys," she said as we crowded around the porch table with the bread pan and Dasher in the corner of it. "1 for the money, 2 for the show, 3 to get ready, and away you go." Oh, I'm sorry, Mama said that. I don't think she'd say it like that, but hey, I'm having a difficult time to date, I can tell you that. So, who thought a short one wasn't going to be a difficult one? All right. Tom, with his great brain, knew the parts of the Dasher to scrape to get the biggest spoonfuls of ice cream. But I managed to give a fair amount of off. Jeez Louise. I should probably scrap this recording. But I managed to give a fair amount of myself until the Dasher was clean. No, I'm definitely going to call this an edit error on this one. This is definitely an edit error. But I managed to get a fair amount off myself until the Dasher was clean. How's that? Sounds a lot better to me. All right. Then we tipped the bread pan to scoop up the ice cream that had fallen off the melted Dasher. I got suspicious as I watched Tom walk arm in arm down our front porch with Seth and Pete, as Swin repacked the top of the freezer with ice and salt. It just wasn't like my brother to be so big-hearted about sharing the Dasher with his 2 friends every Sunday. I followed them until they went around the corner of our woodshed and stopped. I craned my neck and listened. "Here's my penny," I heard Pete say. "And mine," Seth said. "What about next Sunday?" Tom asked. "What kind are you going to have?" Pete asked. "Pineapple," Tom said. "And you both know Mama makes the best pineapple ice cream in town." "We'll be here," Pete said. "Same time, same signal." "Right," Tom said. "When you hear me whistling, come to the back porch." I wanted to run around the corner of the woodshed and denounce my brother for being a crook, but I restrained myself until Pete and Seth had left. "I heard everything," I said to Tom as he came around the corner of the woodshed. "I'm going to tell Mama, and boy, when I tell Swin, he's going to give it to you." "JD," Tom said, putting his arm around my shoulder, "I'm not going to try to influence you one way or the other. But if you tell Mama, she's going to insist that I give Seth and Pete back the pennies I've collected so far. And knowing Mama, she will also insist that I invite Seth and Pete every Sunday, because their folks are too poor to have ice cream except on special occasions. And Seth is more your friend than he is mine, because he's nearer your age. Am I right?" "I guess that is what Mama would do, all right," I admitted. "But you swindled Sven and me." "How?" Tom asked. "We could both get more ice cream off the Dasher without Seth and Pete digging into it," I answered. "No, you wouldn't," Tom said. "Did you notice I always whistle before and not after Mama takes the Dasher from the freezer bucket? That is so she will see Pete and Seth. So that she will see Pete and Seth. You don't think Mama would leave that much ice cream on the Dasher just for you and me and Swin, do you?" "I guess not," I said. "So I won't tell Mama, but I am going to tell Swin?" "Go ahead," Tom said. "He'll just be cutting off your nose to spite your face. He will want to make as much money on the deal as I do. So that means we'll have to take on 2 more customers. You know, the freezer holds just enough ice cream for Sunday dinner, especially when we have guests. Mama can't leave any more ice cream on the Dasher than she does now. It'll simply mean less ice cream off the Dasher for you every Sunday." Tom dropped his hand from my shoulder. He looked steadily into my eyes. "As I said, JD, I'm not going to try to influence you one way or the other. I'm just going to leave the decision strictly up to you." I watched him as he walked toward the back porch, leaving me alone to make the decision. He hadn't tried to bribe me or Blackmail me? With his great brain, I knew he could have influenced me, but he didn't even try. He had treated me as an equal and left the decision strictly up to me, acting strictly on my own. I decided not to tell Mama or Swin. After Sunday dinner that day, Tom Swin and I followed Papa and Abe Glassman into the parlor. We listened fascinated as Abe told Papa all the places that he'd been during the year and all the things he'd seen and heard. Papa made notes of items he thought would be of interest for the subscribers of the Aidenville Weekly Advocate. Abe appeared to me not to be his usual cheerful self. Papa must have also noted it. "You look worried, Abe," Papa said. "Do you need any money?" Papa didn't have any money because Mama said he didn't know beans about trying to save $1, but Papa knew he could send Abe to see Calvin Whitlock. Abe stared at the oriental rug on the floor. "It isn't money that worries me," he said. "It's just that I'm getting too old to travel around with my wagon." "Then why do it?" Papa asked. Abe shrugged his thin shoulders. "What else can I do?" Papa thought for a moment and then snapped his fingers. "We'll open a variety store right here in Aidenville," he said. Abe's eyes brightened for a second and then became sad. "I'm afraid it wouldn't pay," he said. "The Mormons naturally buy everything they can at the CCMI store, and there aren't enough non-Mormons in Aidenville to support a variety store. Besides, it would take every cent I have to open a store, and if it failed—" He did not finish the sentence. "Nonsense," Papa said. Are you thinking You are thinking back to the time of Brigham Young, when the Mormon leader tried to drive all the non-Mormon business out of Utah with the CCMI stores. Things have changed, Abe. I'm not a Mormon, but 95% of the subscribers of my newspaper are. Mormons and I get all their printing business. Don Huddle, the blacksmith, he's not a Mormon. Fred Tanner, who owns the livery stable, is not a Mormon." Papa was a good talker when it came to settling up somebody else's future. I knew Abe didn't have a chance when Papa went to work on him. "Calvin Whitlock has a vacant frame building on Main Street," Papa said. "He can have a carpenter build some quarters and shelves in it and partition off the rear of the living quarter." But Abe started to protest. "No buts about it," Papa interrupted him. "Now go see Calvin, right now." When Papa returned home, let's go see Calvin right now. When Papa returned home, he told Mama everything was settled. Abe would open his variety store. "Just think, Tina," Papa said to Mama, "after years and years of living and traveling around in that peddler's wagon, at last, Abe Glassman has found a home." The end. Have a good night.